Well, hello and welcome at Kunsthal. Hello. Good to see you here. Yeah, wow. Amazing to see so many faces in the audience. We're totally fully booked, sold out for today's artist talk. My name is Aimée de Jongh and I'm very honored to have this talk today. I hope you are also feeling good. Let's start off. Born in 1988 at the countryside, Waalwijk, brought her all the way to Rotterdam, where she studied at Willem de Kooning Academy. So many awards, and we're so happy that she's here. Give her a warm and big welcome, Aimée de Jongh.
Thank you. Hi.
Hello,
Hi.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So
Hi.
Amazing to have you here today. How are you doing?
Nervous, but
Yes,
good.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Your day already started quite early because you had
Yes.
a small group of people who you joined them
Yeah.
on a tour to the storylines, and now you're here. And you also had a very, very busy couple of months traveling Europe. Could you sort of tell us and explain us how it was?
Yeah, so the past couple months were very busy because I was touring with my new book, Lord of the Flies, and I'm sure we'll talk about that later. But
Yes.
It was an international release, and so there were many countries that asked me to come and talk a little bit about the book and sign books. So I've been traveling a lot, and I'm very happy to be here in my hometown, Rotterdam, and to join you here and to have an exhibition here because this is my home. So it's very special.
Yeah. And of course, we're going to talk a bit more about Lord of the Flies, but first let's start from the beginning. Who's Aimée de Jongh?
Yeah.
You were born in 1988, Waalwijk, the countryside, but not so far from one of our biggest fantasy theme parks, the Efteling. Is that something where you went a lot with your parents, for example?
Yes. So I grew up in Waalwijk, which is very close to the Efteling. And it's funny because the Efteling is a theme park, so you have roller coasters and stuff like that, but a very big part of the park is also about fairy tales. So even when I was a little kid, we would go to the Efteling and I would be looking at fairy tales and storytelling and the visuals of the theme park. And I think somehow that really made a big impact. I mean, we were there almost every week. So, I can't imagine it was not an influence on me.
No. Hey, and the funny thing is that you grew up in a family who also were art lovers, and they brought you to this place when you were a young kid, right?
Yes, I'm just going to see if I have it. Yes.
Yes, it's there. How cute, isn't it?
So I have a twin sister.
Yeah.
This is when we were 6 years old. And my father, he used to teach in an art school in Tilburg, and he always took us to museums all over the country. And coming from Waalwijk, Rotterdam was like a very exotic place, a very big city. So we would go to the Kunsthal and look at the exhibitions here. Sometimes we would drive to Belgium to see museums or Germany. So that was really a big part of our cultural development.
Yeah. How old were you?
I think 6 years old, and I'm the girl on the right.
Yeah.
As you can see, because I'm very serious, thinking about my
Almost
future career.
taking notes, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
making notes about my exhibition.
Wow, yeah. And now, 30 years later, you're sitting here with so many people.
I sent this to the people here at the Kunsthal, and they said, we have to include this photo.
Of course we did.
Yes.
Yeah. And what was the first moment you got in touch with comics? At what age?
I think like the youngest I would remember is just reading comics that my parents had at their home, because they were comic lovers. They had a big collection of comic books. And I really enjoyed just, grabbing a comic from the shelf and reading it. And so a lot of those comics were very classical comics like Asterix or Lucky Luke, the series that everyone had at home. I think, probably I was 10 years old when I started making my own drawings based on those comics. But yeah, the first time I read a comic, I must have been like this age, maybe, or a bit older.
Yeah, Robert Doos was also one of your favorites, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I brought some pictures of that because I wasn't sure if anyone would recognize those comics, but maybe if you see it, you recognize it. So in Dutch, we call it Robert Doos.
Yeah.
And I would always read them in Dutch as well, but originally they're from France. And I just, I selected two of my favorite albums. These were drawn by André Franquin, and he is an amazing artist. It may look a bit stiff or maybe like a little simple, but the artistry and the genius of this artist is amazing. Like, I don't think anyone has surpassed his level of genius. And it's funny because those comics were read by children and by kids, and they would just read it for fun. But when I would read these comics, I would really look at the way they were drawn, and I would try to copy the little characters when I was a kid, and then I found out that it was actually very hard to do.
Yeah, even though it looks very simplistic.
It looks very simple.
Yeah,
it looks very simple, but it's on purpose, because he was such a good artist that he could minimize the number of lines. He knew exactly what to focus on and draw the essentials of a drawing. And it's like Picasso. Like, if you're a really good artist, you know how to simplify what you're drawing, and that's what he was doing. So to me, this is art.
Nice. Yeah. And you also mentioned Aimée and Jongh.
Yeah.
Both of them, they're some inspiration for you, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because you say inspirations, and they were, but I think at the time it wasn't that clear that it was an inspiration for me. I was just reading them and enjoying them and copying them in my free time when I was not in school, but it didn't feel like I was studying art or something, even though in a way I was studying art.
Yeah.
This is the same series, Robert Doos or Spirou. And this is an album that really influenced me. It's number 46 in the series, and this is drawn by a different artist, but it's the same character. And this was a very dark story, and the drawings were very cinematic. So if you read this page, the pace and the choice of images it almost feels like watching a movie, and that was so different from, the ones I just showed you, because I felt like, wow, this is something that speaks to me as a young person, someone growing up with movies and action movies. It really felt like, oh, this is an artist that knows what cinematography is. And so this was one of the biggest influences, I think, when I was 12 or 13 years old.
Is this also what you drew to animation, for example?
Yeah, I think so. In the end, I think definitely it did. The movement in, like, the way the character is climbing over the fence and everything, it just seems like it's alive and moving. And that was a really big change for me to see that was possible in comics.
Yeah, and the funny thing is that you mentioned before that also the way they draw, you have some similarities in your work, isn't it?
Yes, I think if you go to the exhibition now, you will see influences from this artist, Jongh. You will see influences from Franquin, but you will definitely see influences from manga. And yeah, that's, until today, it's one of my biggest influences for sure.
Yeah, and then especially this one from Autonomy.
Yes, Autonomy,
Akira. Which is 2,000 pages,
yes,
right?
It's insane.
It's a big one. Maybe you can sort of explain us why this was such a big influence on your work.
Yeah, I think I was used to reading comics that I just showed you, the European comics. And then when I first discovered manga, which is the Japanese word for comics, it was really such a surprise to me. It was all in black and white. So the first thing I thought was, where is the color? And then when you start reading, after 2 pages, you forget that there is no color, because they do everything with screen tones, which is kind of a gray technique. So they work with black and white and gray.
Yeah.
But you can do anything you want. You can make dark pictures, light pictures. It is very cinematic, again. You feel the movement of the motor. What I love about the last picture here is that you can kind of see how the motorcycle lifts up, like the front wheel is coming up from the floor. And so that shows how fast it's going. And like in one picture, you have this movement. What also helps is the speed lines, so all the lines on the floor that kind of exaggerate the movement. And I was just blown away by it. I knew, like, okay, this is what I want to do. I want to draw these kind of comics.
Yeah, it also gave you a sort of confidence that also only with black and white and gray that there's a story to tell, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's, we talked about the essentials, but that is the essential, that sometimes colors are used to mask, like, I do it too. If I have a drawing that I don't like, I just use a lot of color so you don't see the mistakes.
Oh, really?
But if there is no color, there's nowhere to hide. Like, all you see is the lines.
Almost naked.
Yeah, you're almost naked, you're drawing, and it has to be a very good drawing because you cannot mask it.
Do you think it takes a lot longer to do so? Because there's something maybe interesting for the audience also to know, that normally in manga they use like the background is a sort of drop. They copy them, right?
Yes.
But he doesn't do that, right? So
yeah, so that's true. So that's so amazing about this artist. And so in Japan, manga are very much, they're a product that sells very fast on very cheap paper. People read it very fast, like on the way to work, and then they throw it out. It's meant to be read very quickly, and there's not too much value in the books. It's almost like a magazine, like how we use magazines.
Yeah. Are the stories different then as well?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think so, because they have a lot of cliffhangers, to keep your attention span intact. And so exactly, like one of the things they do not to use too much time or waste too much time drawing is use a prefab made backgrounds. So you can just find a city landscape, put it in your drawing, and then maybe add the characters, and it's done. So in 10 minutes you have a whole picture. But he does it differently. He is the kind of artist that just, this is also from his work. And he draws meticulously all the details of the buildings and like the school playground, everything. And that's what drew me to his work, is the artistry again, and the fact that he takes his time to do that, even though he doesn't have to. It's just amazing. Yeah.
And I know that you once also sold your own manga books with a group of
Yes, I did. Yeah, I think I was about
authors.
15 years old, and we used to make our own manga, inspired by this kind of stuff, but not as good, and print it at home, and then put some staples through them and sell them for €2, at comic events. But it was a lot of fun, because you kind of create a group of people, a community. And you have the same passion. We could all geek out about this kind of stuff with each other, and everyone would understand.
Are you still in contact with them?
Yeah, I am.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go to your time in art school.
Yes, I think that's the art school. I went to the Willem de Koning Academy in Rotterdam,
which is based here.
It's really just 10 minutes away, and it changed a lot in my work and a lot in the way I looked at my work. And I think still, because I know there's a lot of students here, one of the most important things about art school is maybe not what you learn technically, like how to draw or something. I mean, we all knew how to draw when we entered art school.
Yeah.
But it's more about how you present your work to others, to your fellow students, to the teachers. You have to think about the concept behind something. You're not just randomly drawing something you like. You have to have a story and an idea, and then you have to present it to the world. And also to get criticism from teachers or other students is very important. It's not fun, but it's very important.
Yeah, it's very important. Do you think you changed a lot during those 4 years?
Yeah, I think so. I think so because I studied animation, and maybe that's good to explain that animation is something else than comics, of course. It's more about making films.
Yeah.
And so what we did in school, we learned how to make short animation films where we would do all the drawings or all the designs or the 3D animation, but also everything else. So the sound design, the storyboarding, the script, the whole process from beginning to end.
Yeah.
And in the graduation year, you could choose like where do you want to specialize in, and then that could be your graduation project. So I chose to make a short movie because I wanted to make, you know, a short story and see how the timing and everything worked. And yeah, I learned a lot from that, just to even to make a planning that works, or even to be able to communicate the story, which was quite complicated, but to communicate the story through the film. So here you see on the bottom one of the screenshots from that film.
Yeah, beautiful. And I think one of your inspirations was also Floor de Goede, who made the daily comics.
Yes.
Was it also during your period of study, while you studied?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So that's funny because Floor, now we're really good friends. At the time, I didn't know him at all. I just followed his comics online, and he's a comic artist from Amsterdam. And he used to make these daily comics about his own life. In a very funny way. So it was all based on things that really happened, but then I think most of the time it was fictionalized so that it was funny.
But he was also the main character, right?
He was the main character, and we met a couple times, and I was really a big fan of his work. And actually at the time, and this was during my studies, that was a very big thing to have online a webcomic, an autobiography webcomic. So he was not the only one. There was a whole group, a whole community of people doing the same thing. And that inspired me to do a similar thing. I started making my own comics about my daily life. I started publishing.
TV, right?
Yes, Aimée de Jongh, it was called. And it was published every week. So I think every Monday I uploaded a new comic. And this was, you know, whenever I had time away from the education I was doing. But yeah, I think in the beginning it was every Monday, but during the graduation I think it was only once per month or something.
Yeah, of course. Then it's too busy. And right after you sort of graduated, I think Aurora, which is also in our exhibition, is shown a short film. Maybe you can... look at that.
Yeah, I think it's not in here, but it's the first time I did a animation outside of school with a studio and with other animators. So that was really, really interesting. It's in the exhibition. It's only 2 minutes long, so it doesn't take too much time.
But it's also awarded with a big award. Selected for Ultra Kort. Yeah, I think that was one of the film programs we had in the Netherlands, and we still have it, and it's great because it's kind of it's very short. It's a 2-minute film, and you get 6 months to produce it, and it's really for a lot of animators that just graduate. It's the perfect way to enter the movie industry and to get used to the process, having a producer, having an animation studio. Being a director, maybe, and so I'm very happy that still exists. I was one of the first ones to make a film in that program, and it was amazing. I learned so much. Hey, Snippers was right after you graduated. You worked for Metro 5 years, which is a newspaper.
Oh yeah, this is Aurora. This is the short film, which is in the exhibition. And Snippers is
the daily comic, right? Maybe you can sort of tell us how it was for you to make a daily comic, and what you learned also from that. Yeah,
so this really happened by accident because I was thinking, I love comics. I'd love to make comics full time, but how? Like in Holland, there was not really. That kind of job. You could not make comics full-time. Maybe you could work for a newspaper or a magazine, but still that wouldn't be enough to live. So you always needed extra jobs or extra things to do. And I just thought, well, I'm just going to go into animation, and that's going to be my full-time job. There's more money there, there's more jobs, so that makes sense.
Yeah.
And out of the blue, I get an email from the newspaper, Metro, asking me if I want to do a daily comic, because they saw my comics online.
Ah, nice, yeah.
And of course, I had to do like 5 proof comics to see if it would fit the newspaper, but they really liked it, and they gave me a job. So basically, I think I graduated in June, and then in September I had a job as a comic book artist.
Yeah, that's perfect, right?
Yeah, I mean, the timing was just crazy, and I was really scared because I had never done it before. And for those 5 comics, the proof comics, I had time to think of funny jokes and to make like the best 5 comics of my life. But now I had to do it every day of the week. And they were published in a newspaper that was read by millions of people.
I think also very stressful, right?
It was super stressful, yeah. It was just scary. And I think I had, I was just scared that it wasn't going to be funny enough. I was very confident about my drawing, but the jokes, I didn't know if I had it in me. So here's like four comics in the series, so they were always about me. I'm the character with the blue hair, and my roommate Steph, who has the yellow hair. But sometimes I would also just do a random comic about neither of us. Okay. Like the last one is about Star Wars, but it's just random. And that was a way for me to keep the fun in making that comic, and not make it too much about me, and make it too much about my life. And in the end, it was very popular, and I did it for 5 years.
5 years.
Yes.
And if it could have been longer if you want, right?
Yes.
It was your own decision that you stopped, but I think one of the biggest compliments was that the readers of the newspaper, they said their favorite part was your comic.
Yeah, that's right. So they used to do these... they asked people who read the newspaper, what is your favorite part of the newspaper? And it was always the horoscope and the comics.
And the comics.
So that's great.
So it was almost breaking news, right? That you stopped.
So I really enjoyed doing this, and it was a steady job for 5 years, but at the end I was just recycling jokes, basically, because how funny can you be for 5 years, right? So I was just recycling jokes, and I was doing the same comics. That's how I felt. And I was also, in my spare time, I was just drawing very differently from this. I was doing very realistic drawings and more like darker drawings. So one of the things I did during my time in Metro was create an entire graphic novel called...
It's your debut, right?
Yeah, it's The Return of the Honey Buzzard. And I think you can see the difference between Snippers and this. So I was enjoying this a lot because I could put all my my drawing skills in there, while in the newspaper comic I really had to stay in the same style and be almost like I would draw the way I drew when I started that comic. But 5 years later, I had grown as an artist, but I couldn't put it in the comic.
No, and so, that's why you started this project.
That's why I started this project.
About love, grief, and overcoming trauma.
Yes.
Trauma. Yeah. Why this topic?
I think that was something that was really going on in my own head, my own experience. I lost my father by that time. He died of cancer, and I think that theme of grief and overcoming grief and trauma was really part of the story, and it was also part of who I was at that moment. So I was very happy with this chance because it was my first graphic novel, and the publisher really helped me to make it because, again, I had no experience. So I'm still very grateful to Mara, who was my editor, who really, I feel like together we wrote this story and we published it. And after I finished this graphic novel, I knew, like, okay, this is the road I want to go on. I don't want to do any more newspaper comics, because it just felt kind of empty or almost like a commercial choice. So
And
I
now you
decided
had
to
a,
quit.
purpose, right?
Yes, this is now my job.
And it won
Yeah.
the Sint-Michaels Prize
Yes,
in
yeah,
2015 for Best Dutch Comic Book. So
Yeah,
you
like to my
also got the-
surprise, it was very, very successful. Yeah, and that was also a sign for me that I was doing well and I could do it and I should continue that way.
Yeah.
I think I still have
This one.
the newspaper.
Yeah.
So for the people who don't read Dutch, I don't know if you know RTL Boulevard, but it's a very popular show. And so the moment I quit Snippers, so the newspaper comic, it was all over the news.
Unbelievable,
Yeah,
right?
and then at that
Already.
point I thought, oh no, what have I done?
But you're still happy with this
yes,
decision,
I'm still.
right?
I was very happy with the decision. As you could see, I mean,
Yeah.
there was much more freedom
Yeah.
in graphic novels.
And not so long after, you published Europe's Waiting Room about
Yes.
Lesbos.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is a big part of the exhibition, actually, and I'm very happy with that because it is one of the most personal projects I did. And again, the timing was a complete coincidence. I have the feeling my whole career is made up of coincidences.
Yeah,
But,
or you were very open to it, right?
Maybe.
Or maybe even seeking for it, and then it comes to
yes,
you.
maybe
in
that's
kind
it.
of way. Yeah,
Yeah,
because
it could be.
you didn't actually went, not at the first moment to Lesbos, but one of your friends went there.
Exactly, yeah. It was
Yeah.
one of my friends who told me that she went to the refugee camps in Greece to do volunteer work.
Volunteer work, yeah.
And she was there for a couple months, and I said, well, do you have any photos? Because I'm so curious what it looks like. And she said to me, well, no, because I was not allowed to take photos. Cameras are not allowed, journalists are not allowed, only we had a badge and we could go inside. And so the first thing I thought was, okay, well, we all know that if there are places where journalists are not allowed, you know that there are some bad things happening there that they don't want the world to see.
Yeah.
And the second thing I thought, well, what would happen if I just take my pens and my sketchbook?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a camera, so maybe that's allowed. And
Very brave, actually,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Say,
I mean, at that
why
point, I
not
didn't
me?
think so. Later, I thought, oh, what have I done? But yeah, I mean, that was talking about timing. I had just quit Snippers. I just stopped Snippers. I had this like black gaping hole in my planning. I had nothing to do, and I thought, well, I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to, I called a newspaper, NRC, and asked if they would publish it, if I would do it, and they said yes, we will publish it.
Were you already in contact with them, or?
Yeah, I did, because they wrote like reviews of my graphic novel. And so I thought, okay, I'll just do it. And I had no experience with journalism, no experience with drawing, graphic journalism at all.
And why did they make the exception for you? Because you are also sort of, you're drawing it instead of taking
but I think,
photos.
Yeah, I think drawing is very accessible medium. It's not scary. I mean, if you take a camera, if I would take a picture of you with a camera, it's kind of strange. You have this thing, this black thing. You don't know what's going to happen with the pictures. You don't know if, I'm going to run off and do something with them, and you don't know what. Maybe you'll never see those pictures. But with the drawing, I mean, I draw on the spot, so you see what's happening. And often I show them the drawing, and it's fine. And they even think it's kind of magical to see an artist. I mean, we've all been to Montmartre in Paris and made people draw portraits. It's kind of a magical thing. Yeah. So I don't think it was really a threat to anyone. But for me, the thing that I was thinking, if I draw very realistically, it's almost as good as a photo. So I can show people what's happening in the camps, while a photographer cannot do it.
Yeah, so you wanted to tell the stories, right?
Yeah, I did, yeah.
Yeah, so this is what you encountered, right, when you were there?
Yes, this is what I saw. I was there for a week, so it was a very short time, but I felt like I was there for a year. Like all the impressions from the island, and like on the right you see the life jacket graveyard. which is just a big mountain of life jackets from refugees who arrive on the Greek coast. And they are going into the refugee camps to register and everything. But all the boats and the life vests are then collected from the beach and put on one big pile. Yeah. So I guess the good thing about this pile is that all these people made it, all these people survived, but I'm so shocked when I see the photo because the number of arrivals at that time was so high, they just didn't know what to do with those life vests. Yeah. And here are some photos from the camp that I took secretly. And for me, because I mean, I'd never done anything like this, so every second and every minute of this trip was something new. Mm-hmm. And I also had the feeling like, what am I doing here? I cannot even draw how bad the situation is. Yeah. I really had trouble finishing that work because I kept thinking, okay, now I'm drawing this person, but I have to simplify it so much that I'm not really showing the real pain and the real story. Yeah. And so that was a really interesting process.
What was the hardest for you to take in while being there?
I think that the hardest thing was the trauma in the camps, because there were people who came from Syria and Iraq and Afghanistan, and they were already traumatized before coming to Europe. And then they would go into those rubber boats, arrive in Greece, and put into camps. And those camps were terrible. At the time, there was still Moria, which doesn't exist now, but that was an infamous camp. It was like the worst living conditions in Europe. People were just sleeping on the ground, little children too. And it was just trauma upon trauma upon trauma. And I thought, this is not how you treat people. At the same time, they were very welcoming. Like the refugees were so warm and so nice. They would invite me and the other artists, because I was there with two other artists. Yeah. They would invite us in and give us tea and food, and we made little drawings to thank them for the food. So like you would talk to them and you would not feel like, oh, this is one of the worst moments in their life, because they were just so happy to talk with you. Yeah. So that's that really stayed with me, the warmth of the people. Yeah.
What we have over there, we still have some drawings of you.
Yeah, I was drawing children mostly. This is, I love the one in the middle, Mohammed, 4 years old. Because the children were often the reason people would come to Europe, to give them a better life. And at the same time, you know, those kids, they were traumatized from birth and still playing football with each other, still playing in the field and giving us little gifts and flowers and, you know, being kids. And so they were kind of, also for the parents, they were the little piece of hope that they would still have. Yeah. So they were so important in those camps to keep the spirit and the feeling of life is worth living or something intact. So I really focused on drawing children.
What did you hope that people got out of the drawings?
That's a good question, because I don't think I really thought about it that way, but later I did see, when we entered certain boxes where they would live, I would see the drawing that we made on the wall with tape. So they would hang them up in their box. And so they were gifts for them, but they meant so much more. It was almost like they felt seen after being treated as a number for so long, because they arrive and they literally get a number, like your number 1478. And that's on your pass, that's on your box, that's how you go to the registration office. Yeah. So they don't even have a name.
No, yeah.
And then having someone to sit in front of you and draw your face and give it to you is a very intimate thing to do. Yeah.
So they felt seen.
Yeah, they did. Yeah. But that was not like until I was there that I realized that's how it worked. Yeah.
And when it was published, what kind of reaction did it got? Is it something also what you thought of?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. It was a very, it was published, I got really great responses. It was bought by several newspapers, also a Greek newspaper, which was very surprising to me, because it was kind of a commentary on the Greek system, but they would still wanted to publish it. So only good comments, and I was very happy also that the people in the comic liked it, because I was so in touch with some of them, and I sent it to them, and even though we didn't speak each other's language, we would kind of communicate with emojis, and they would give me a thumbs up.
Okay,
so I
perfect.
thought, okay, that's good.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah.
And was this also the beginning for your drawings about Ter Apel?
Yes, it was. Yeah, this was the inspiration for that, because, going to a country and seeing how people are treated is one thing, but then seeing it on the news in Holland, there were a lot of asylum seekers that were sleeping outside in like little tents or not even tents. So I also went there to speak to the people, give them portraits, and draw that little story that's also in the exhibition. Because I thought, like, I'm giving this commentary on another country, but it's not really fair, and I should do the same thing in Holland. So that's what I did.
Yeah, giving the trees in Ter Apel names, right? They have names.
Yes, exactly.
And that's what you,
Yeah, and I think I saw at the time the same pictures coming in the media. So there were the pictures of people sleeping outside on the floor, and like every time it was the same picture. And I think as an artist, you go to a place like that, you see different things. So for example, I saw that in the trees around the asylum center, people had carved their names in, and it actually looked really beautiful because it was in Arabic, right? So it was kind of mysterious, and I took photos and sent some to my friends who speak Arabic, and they said, these are names. Wow. These are names of people. So maybe it was for their families that were passing through to show, like, I was here too, or maybe just a way to, stay somewhere or have a place to stay. So I used that in my comic, and that was the first time I saw that in the media, actually. So for me, that was very clear that I could add something, that I have a different set of eyes maybe than the regular journalist.
Did you make the same contact with those
I did.
there?
Yeah. And they were very kind to me, again, like very, very sweet people. Yeah.
Do you have some pictures with you?
I'm not sure. I think I have more of the... This is Ter Apel, yeah. This is Ter Apel, 2 years ago.
Yeah.
But
it was horrific.
It was really bad, So people would come down to Ter Apel and give tents to the asylum seekers.
But in
and then the police would take them
rain,
away again because it was unsafe to camp or something. So in the end, they were just sleeping like this all night and all day. And in the end, we're all people, right? So I don't see why we should treat people this way.
Differently,
Very often, I think if you change the word refugee or asylum seeker by human, then you see how bizarre it is what we're doing. So.
Yeah, it's really good that with these drawings you open eyes of people.
I hope so.
Yes,
I hope so.
Yes. Blossoms in Autumn.
Yeah.
Yes.
A very different subject.
A very different one. 2018, a scenario from Zidru. Maybe you could tell us a bit how you came across Zidru and how you worked on this novel.
So Zidru is a Belgian writer. He writes mostly for comics. So it's not like he writes novels or something. He's really specialized in comics, and I knew his work for a very long time. Even when I was a kid, I was reading his work. He even wrote scenarios for Spirou. I don't know, I think it was the publisher that said to me, hey, would you like to work with a scenario writer for your next book? This was the French publishing house that I was working with. And I thought, why not? I could try, So far I did my own stories, but I'm very curious what would happen if I worked with another set of brains and another set of eyes, and see if my drawings would change or my stories would change. And so...
Did you already knew what the subject was?
No, not really. I mean, he had like a very vague idea of the subject, which was love at old age.
Yeah.
But he wanted to meet me first to see like what kind of person I was and see what would fit with me, which I really liked.
Yeah.
So we had a couple meetings in Belgium and then meetings in Spain where he was living. And then he finished the scenario Blossoms in Autumn, and it was amazing. It was so good.
It's my favorite.
Yeah.
I really love it.
And it's very simple, basically. It's a love story. It's a love story about two older people who are not only accepting love again, but also accepting themselves.
Yeah, loving themselves, their bodies, and their whole, right?
Yeah, their bodies, yes, yes. One of the things that I loved exploring in this book was breaking the taboo of the aging body. Because I still think even in comics, and maybe especially in comics, we see kind of the stereotypical nudity. And, you know, once you're past 60, your body is not the same as it was when you were 20 or 30. And this woman used to be a photo model.
Yeah, that's the
and
funny thing.
She used to be liked for her prettiness and her beautiful body. She posed for magazines like Playboy and stuff. And now she's old and she's falling in love with a man and she has to accept that this is what she looks like. So it's really a beautiful book, very poetic about the aging body and accepting
but it's
how
also
you feel.
very recognizing, right, for people.
Yes, that's what I heard. Yes.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, and the funny thing is that I went to the exhibition for a couple of times, and always people are standing there and then, reminiscing about about it. And what kind of critics or reactions do you got from this one?
Yeah, very positive, actually, very positive, because I thought, you know, I want to put this in the exhibition, and thank God the curator, Charlotte, had the same idea, because we all know comics that are funny and for kids, and for me it was so important to put this in the exhibition and show that these are comics as well. And I love seeing responses from people who are there in the room and looking at this and like, wow, that's special, and it's kind of brave to draw it this way. Yeah. And funny thing, we put this on the cover actually in the Dutch and the Belgian edition, on the back cover. Yeah. But when it was translated in English and it was published in the United States, we had to take it off the cover. Yeah.
Unbelievable, right?
Yeah, it was too much.
Yeah.
America.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
It was still on the inside though.
But still.
Typical.
Yeah, taxi. That brings us also to quite a lot of moments that you had to be in a taxi.
Yeah, this is really, it's an autobio comic. It's not in the exhibition, but it's maybe one of my favorite projects. It's a very short comic about the taxi drives I had while traveling for work. I was doing, by this time, because Blossoms was a very big hit, I was doing a lot of signing sessions in different countries, like the United States that I just mentioned invited me to come for festivals. So I would go to festivals. And
Blossoms was nominated for 5 awards of 5 countries.
Exactly.
So you had to travel a lot.
And you always end up in a taxi. So, and I started having very interesting conversations with taxi drivers, even though they have a very bad reputation. Especially in Paris, they have a very bad reputation. And I understand why. But,
why?
They can be very, unkind. They can be very quiet and, you know.
Maybe they don't want to speak English, maybe? That's why you also try to speak French,
yes,
right?
Yeah. Like I was a typical tourist at the time, I couldn't speak French, and then, you know, there's a certain way that they treat you, let's put it that way. So I had all these funny stories about taxis, and I thought, well, I'll just combine them in a book, and the book is called Taxi. And these are all short stories that really happened to me. And it still means a lot to me, this book.
Yeah, I can imagine, because it's autobiographic, so...
Yeah.
Yeah, and then let's talk about Days of Sand,
Yeah, because
2021.
I really wanted to, this is still from Taxi,
Yeah. This was one of the longest
It's
drives,
actually
right?
funny, because you ask about Days of Sand. Well, after drawing this book, I had to draw so many cars, and it's one of the worst things to draw is cars. So difficult. So as a joke, I started saying to people like, okay, my next book is going to be about a desert. And then the next book was about a desert.
It was a desert, yeah.
And it's Days of Sand, and it is kind of about a desert. It's a desert in the United States in the 30s. At the time, there were these very big sandstorms and dust storms.
Yeah.
It was caused by climate change. There was a long drought, there was a heat wave, but it was also caused by farmers who worked on the land and who kind of took all the trees and the grass from the soil to make their own farm companies. And because of that, all the dust and the sand would just blow up into the air. So the sandstorms were kind of a climate disaster that was created by people.
Right? Yeah.
And I was really intrigued by it, and I found these kind of photos, and I thought, wow, this is a visual spectacle. Like, why is there not a movie about this? Well, then I guess I should make a comic about it.
Yeah.
And I think these are some photos from that time that are very well known, that people might recognize. Yeah.
It's a project what almost took you 2 years or maybe longer, right?
Yeah, 2 years, yeah. I think it was 2 years to draw, but like the research and everything took a lot longer. It was maybe 2 years to even do the research. I went to the States to do a lot of research, to write a scenario based on the research and everything. So maybe the whole thing was 5 years, I don't know. But it was all worth it, I think, because to me, this was the first time I made a project that was, that I felt like I know what I'm doing, because all the other times it was either a coincidence or I was kind of just at this spot making this project and I didn't really know what I was doing. And this was the first time I thought, okay, I have a scenario that I like, I choose the colors that I like, my drawing skills are at this level that I can control what I'm doing or something, and that gave me so much peace of mind that I think it really reflects back into the book.
Yeah. And the funny thing is that it's all based on your research and a lot of black and white photos, but you used color. Why did you decide to use color instead of black and white?
Well, that's a very good question, because you saw the photos, they were all black and white. And that was the reason for me. I thought, if I Google this period of time, all I see is black and white images. So if I make a black and white comic, then what would I be adding? I think it's more interesting to add color, because I can. And I had enough information from my research, because people from that time were describing the sandstorms with all kinds of colors. I read diaries of people living there who said, it's just red and yellow and orange, and the sun is this very bright red ball in the sky. So I had all the information I needed to use color, so I did. Yeah,
you even went there and took photos of the soil, so you can sort of make the same color, right?
I did very thorough research. I dug a hole into the ground and looked what color the soil was.
It's nominated also for the Eisner Award, and which is amazing. Also for best digital comic and a best graphic reprint. And there are some people who are so much of a fan of your work, they tattooed themselves, right?
It's crazy. If I was in that room, I would probably have told this guy, don't do it.
Why?
Well, because you have a tattoo for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Well, it is.
It's amazing,
cool.
right?
It's amazing. Yeah. If there's somebody on this planet walking around with a Days of Sand tattoo, I don't know what to think of it. I think that's pretty crazy. I would not have done that.
No.
Yes.
And look at the list of awards it got. Yeah, unbelievable.
Yeah, but I think it comes down to what I was just telling you about, feeling that peace of mind and feeling like I'm now at this level of choosing consciously what I'm doing with my work.
Yeah.
And I think it shows in the book. It feels like, once you start reading, it really feels like the author is taking you by the hand and showing you this place and showing you the characters, meeting the characters. And they come alive. And I think until then I did not have the skill to do that. And when I was winning all these awards and stuff, and there's a big mural in Brussels as well, I think that the reason why the story affects people is because the storytelling works, because the characters are believable, and and I don't know. That took a long time to get to that skill set.
It's a real story, and maybe that's also what's different in a way. I don't know. Yeah. How did you choose to make the area in the exhibition what it is? Like,
well, I have to say, most of that was chosen by the curator, Charlotte, who works for the Kunsthal, and she's brilliant. She's here. She also worked with IWW, among other people. I mean, that's insane. And she was the one who really would propose to how the exhibition was set up, the different chapters and everything. So that's all thanks to her.
Yeah, it's beautiful, and it also really gives a good insight of the whole research work what you've done.
For sure. Yeah.
Are we also going to see a bit more in depth, maybe?
Maybe I don't think later, so, because that's right? In the exhibition we have a very big vitrine, like a very big a place where you can see sketches and more photos from the research. So, if anyone is interested, go to the exhibition.
Yeah. Okay, 60 years in winter. Yeah, a scenario with Ingrid.
This is one of my most recent works. So that means we're almost at the end. But this is the one that I really enjoyed making about a subject that I never thought I would use for my comics. This is about a woman who had a very long and not so happy relationship, decides to leave her husband and then
her family as well.
And her family, to find herself, kind of, and in the process finding out that she has sexual feelings for women. And it was written again by someone else, by Ingrid Chabert, who's a French writer. And she based the story on the real story of a friend. So one of her friends had actually gone through this. Not literally, because there's a scene where the woman turned 60 years old on her birthday and then leaves the family. I mean, didn't literally happen. No, but it could have been. Yeah, but it did happen. So it's a story about autonomy and about feminism and choosing your own life.
And in a way, how could you sort of, this story, what's seen in 60 years in winter, also, point into your own life? Did you make certain decisions where you really choose to be free or choose your own
That's
path?
a good question, because it's funny because the responses to this book were sometimes very positive. Mostly women would say, wow, go girl, this is great, and she takes life into her own hands. Yeah. And then there were other people who said, but she's leaving her children and she's leaving her husband, and it's very egocentric. And what I learned from it's so
it's
interesting.
Not really what it looks like, right? Yeah. Also, the husband has.
Yeah. So the husband is very unkind. The children are already grown up. So I mean, they're fine. But so what I learned
it's more nuanced.
What I really learned from this book, and I think that's true in my own life as well, is that if you choose one thing, you go for one thing, you always leave behind something else. So if I choose for I don't know, a certain project, that means other projects will not happen. If I choose to do a certain kind of story, that means maybe other things will not be told. And also in my personal life, maybe I choose for certain people, which means I'm not in touch with others. Yeah. And so there's always a kind of, there's the decision, and then there is what you leave behind. And that was like only after the responses came in that I realized that's really what the story is about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And did it got different responses from different countries, for example? Or
Yeah. I
critic-
mean, like in France, I had an audience that was mostly female, which was very interesting because traditionally it's really mostly read by men, especially in France. So that was a very big change, and I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed signing books for women for a change.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah. This is one of my favorite scenes from that book. Yeah, and we had to include it in the exhibition.
Of course. Yeah.
It's the first time they discover each other, the first time they
think
discover love in this way, and
also for both of them, right?
for both
To
of
be
them,
with a
yeah.
female body. Yeah.
And they're very, very nervous about it. So it's like the way it's written is so honest, and it's so realistic.
Yeah. Did it got a big? How do you say that? Also, people from the LGBTQI+ community.
Yes, it did. Yeah.
Reactions on that.
Yeah, which was
and
amazing.
What kind of reaction did you got?
Yes. Yeah, I got a really good response from that community, and and they tell me also that it's the first time they see it in a comic. So for me, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's what we wanted.
Yeah. And you were totally free as well on choosing what to draw.
Yes. I could. That's the nice thing about working with a writer, I think, is you have the scenario, but there's a lot of freedom. So you can choose to do something else. You can choose to add 2 or 3 pages if you feel like we need more space here. There's always room, and everything is open for negotiation. So that's great. Yeah.
Well, I think maybe 2022 was also the year where publisher Faber contacted you, right?
Yes, yeah, that was insane. That was the same year that this came out. And again, kind of a coincidence, because I was finishing this comic and thinking, okay, so what's next? What am I going to do next? And then an email came in from Faber from London, which is the famous publishing house founded by T.S. Eliot, and one of the biggest publishing houses in the UK. And the subject was Lord of the Flies. And, you know, that story goes back like to 2013 when I contacted them and asked if I could do a comic for them based on Lord of the Flies. Yeah. And they said no.
Yeah.
And of course they said no, because I did not have any books out. So, I mean, I totally understand they would think, no, this is our heritage, and we're not going to give this to some 22-year-old girl who's, you know, just very influenced by the book. But by now, because I had done so many other books, and they followed my career, and the 70th anniversary of Lord of the Flies was coming up.
Yeah, which is this year, right?
Yes, it's this year. And so that's why they contacted me again and said, well, if you still want to do it, we're up for it.
Yeah, unbelievable.
Yes.
And the rest is history, right?
Sometimes you have to wait a little while to do the dream project.
But in between those like 10 years, did you contact them again, or was it
I think I did.
Time?
Yeah, I think at some point I had a British publisher, and I thought, okay, I'm going to try again.
Yeah.
But
no. But that's something also to recognize that. Yeah, you sort of have to be stubborn, and
I guess
if you want to stick to your plan, and then it comes to you.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think what you've done there is amazing, right? You took it all to your own hands, and maybe you also got the freedom to do it in your own way.
Yeah, I did. I mean, there was so the rights to do a graphic novel like this based on an existing novel, they're not free or something. You cannot just do a graphic novel of any book. No. You need to get the permission from the people who have the rights, but also for me it was very important to include them in the process and feel like, okay, if they're happy, that's good. That's all I want. So in this case, the author had already passed away, but his children and grandchildren were the ones that were keeping the rights and the copyrights and everything, and we just included them in the process. They would look with me at the sketches, they would look at the final pages, they would give me feedback. Yeah.
And since you've been working with a lot of people already, how was it to work with them?
It was amazing. Yeah, it was amazing, especially with Judy, who was the daughter of Golding, because she was 9 years old when our father wrote the book. And so she, from 9 years old, she had been part of that legacy.
Yeah.
She had seen how the book became popular. She joined her father to all these talks, and it was just part of her DNA almost.
Yeah.
And so when, like the moment that she said, you were born to be the artist of this book, I thought, oh, okay,
wow,
this is all I need.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what other people think. This is all I
It's
want.
a major compliment.
Yes,
right?
yeah.
So
And
you-
I think most people know the story of this book because it's quite a famous
book.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people read it during their child time.
Yes.
But
yeah.
there is one specific thing you sort of changed, right? And that's that they are all kids instead of
Yes.
teenagers. So
Yeah, that's very funny that you say that because the book was written about children between 6 and 12 years old. It's literally in the book. But what happened later is there were 2 movies made of Lord of the Flies, and casting the children in the film,
Yeah.
I think it was just not allowed or something, which I understand because it's a very violent story. So you don't want 6-year-olds, to play in the film. So in the films, they were casted as teenagers, which does a lot for the visuals of the story because they are much longer and taller. They look more like adults almost. You feel like, all right, they're on the brink of turning into an adult. And I guess it works, but for me it was very important to stay true to the book and say, no, this is about 6-year-olds, and they are being violent, and that is shocking. That's why the original book was so shocking.
Yeah.
So yes, I made them quite young, and a lot of people tell me like, oh, they're so much younger, and
But actually, that's
they are
true.
as they
Truth,
were
right?
supposed to be.
Yeah.
We are just very influenced by the movies.
Yeah.
These are all the
All
some of the translations.
Because there are like 25
Yes.
countries.
25 countries.
And how many languages is it translated to?
I think it's more than that. Yeah.
Wow,
It's,
unbelievable.
I don't have the latest numbers.
No, yeah.
But
And
it's special to
most
see.
of them like having the same book cover, but just this one.
The Italians,
different.
they wanted something different. I don't know why.
Yeah. Oh, they don't ask you, right?
They don't really ask me. They just tell me, like, oh, we chose a different cover. Okay.
Yeah.
I guess that's okay.
Wow, yeah. I think you definitely brought something new to the table. And that's also what they said, even Faber, right?
Yes,
They
that's what they
say
did.
even on their website, it will quickly be seen as a classic work in its own, which is like such a big compliment.
It's
right?
amazing, yeah. I don't think that's true, but it's
Still,
still nice that
it's
they
good
say that.
it, right? Yeah. I think we're already done because the talk would be an hour. So I think there are a lot of people here willing to ask some questions. So we have somebody with a mic over there as well, or otherwise I can. Yeah, perfect. So. And the funny thing is that we also, how you work. Yeah, but maybe we can include it in the artist talk, in the Q&A now. So is there somebody who wants to start with the first question? Yeah. Just shortly say your name and then what your question is.
Hi, my name is Lidori, and thank you so much for your talk. Really inspired me. I'm actually doing a graphic thesis for a university, and I was just wondering, I'm struggling a little bit about words, turning them into images, and I was wondering if you had that same struggle by, the book of Lord of the Flies, and how you converted them into the illustrations and drawings you have, and if you have any advice.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. It's funny that you ask because I have something with me, and this is my first copy of Lord of the Flies that I used for the adaptation. So here you see all the memos, all the notes I made to start working on the first draft. I think for me the process is a very visual process. So I see the book and the words almost like a script that has to be turned into something visual. And it's not something literal. I don't take the text too literal. I try to find what the atmosphere is in the book, like what's in between the lines almost. Because the moment I start using the words literally, it just starts to slow down the comic book. And I mean, the book already exists, so you don't have to reread the book in the graphic novel. So I was really focusing on what is between the lines and what can I add visually. Like, for example, the children, making the children very young is something that a lot of people, like, it stands out to people. They say, wow, I mean, imagine being a young kid and being in the jungle all alone. And suddenly it's so striking when you see the actual children walking around in the jungle. So yeah, that's, I think, how I would answer that question. Thank you.
Thank you. Who else? Yeah, over there.
Okay. I'm Hella, and I would like to know if you work on a book like this, for example, that you have like the planning that you have to finish so many pages per day, and how you deal with the stress involved. So that's my question.
Yeah, I do have a planning. I work very strictly. I do 1 page per day. And I used to take more time than that because that's quite fast. But if you're working on books that are 300 pages long, you'll just end up working for years and years. So to keep my sanity, I decided to do 1 page per day. And that's usually from sketch to color, so everything in 1 day. And sometimes I have very long days because it's a lot of work. But it makes it easier to plan a book, for example, to plan how much time I need. And I think what's also important is to keep the spark that I have from the beginning, like the enthusiasm that I feel when I start, to keep that intact and not lose it after, 5 years, or you're still working with the same characters, you're still drawing the same backgrounds, and that's the moment I start doing other things, because I just get bored. So I think it's very fast, but I know I can do it, and that's the reason I do it that way. But yeah, it's very structured. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah, that's also why you choose to do some things in between, right? In between the 2 books.
Yeah. I can't sit still. When I'm working on a project for too long, I just start doing other projects.
There are 2 more questions, maybe first here in the front.
Hi, I'm Monique, and thank you for your beautiful work. So what's your next project? Are you already working on something, or?
Yes, I'm working on a new book, and the subject will be the refugee camps again. So the ones I showed you were short projects, and now I want to work on a longer project. And I went back to the refugee camps this year in July to do more research. And one of the things that really struck me were the different dynamics between the groups on the island. So the people, the local Greek people, and then the refugees, but also the volunteers, and how those 3 groups are kind of linked together and need each other. So it's going to be more about the dynamics on the island than the refugees, but it will be a big part of it. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, in the middle.
Yes, my name is Janie Eisendoorn. Thank you for sharing this biography in pictures and in words. I read that your roots for your ancestors are also in the Dutch Indies, and you're working now in the now, and I was wondering, will there be a possibility that you work with your roots as well?
Thanks. For now, I don't think so, because it's a very complicated history. And I mean, it's true, like from both my parents, I have roots in the Dutch Indies, but there's a lot of books about this history that are much better than anything I could probably make. And I'm also very aware of how complicated the history is. It's not, there's so many nuances that if I choose to show one part of the story, then there's another group that will not be shown, it's like what we talked about, like you make a decision, and like I tried many times to think about a project, but anytime I was just kind of numb because it's too complicated. But who knows, maybe one day, but not in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you. Another question. It's right behind.
Hi, my name is Jessica. My question is, how do you transfer from doing research into, okay, now I'm going to write the book, and then going into the process of, okay, I'm going to draw one page at a time.
Yeah.
So I guess there's some kind of mapping out of the story, and I was wondering, how do you transition, and how do you know, now I've done my research, I can now write the book, or is it an ongoing parallel process?
Yeah, that's funny, because I start with a rough idea for the comic before I do my research, and that's mostly so I can eliminate all the things I don't have to dig into. Like, for example, Days of Sand, at some point I knew, okay, this is going to be about a photographer that's traveling in the United States. So then you kind of, in the research, you can focus on being a photographer in that time, and you will not look at what's it like to be a baker in that time or something, because you know, you can do endless research and never stop. So it's good to have a starting point. But usually during the research, I change everything, and I find something that just changes the whole story, or that tells me like, okay, I need to use this. For example, with Days of Sand, originally it was also going to be a story about migration, so the farmers who migrated to California. But when I was in Oklahoma, seeing what happened there, I thought, no, it's just going to be Oklahoma. I'm not going to go to California. And so there was a whole part that I kind of, I thought of already in the book that I never used. So the research was very important, and so it's very important to keep an open mind, I think, while doing research.
Open mind, but also to kill your darlings, for example, and to be aware that sometimes it's not possible to put it all in the end result, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And you know, you end up doing research every day in the course of a project anyway. I mean, suddenly you have to draw a car from that time, and you think, okay, what does a car from that time look like? Okay, let's look it up. So it basically never really stops. But it's also important to, at some point, start drawing.
Another question. In the back.
Hi, my name is Antoinette, and I first want to thank you for your beautiful drawings. I was really moved reading A Lord of the Flies at the end. I was almost crying. But I was wondering, what was your decision to take this particular drawing for the cover?
So this drawing was based on the very first sketch I made in 2013, when I was 22 or something, and trying to get this project to work, and I got my rejection. So that was basically the same drawing, but in black and white, and it might be in the exhibition, I'm not sure.
It's also in the presentation, right? Yeah.
I don't know if it is, but it's basically the same drawing, but black and white, and it worked really well. I still love it after all those years, and the publisher said, well, it works as a cover, because that's always, you never know if it works as a cover, but it did, so we chose that drawing to use.
Thanks for your question. Okay, there's still some time for some questions. Oh yeah, in the back. Whee! Let's go to the back.
Oh yeah.
Hi, my name is Koers, and I really want to thank you for all the most beautiful books you have made. And I wanted to know, when you made when you asked for the first time if you could make Lord of the Flies, did you already send like one chapter or something, how you would have made it to the publisher?
No, not really a chapter, just one drawing, which was No, the
This
cover.
one. Yeah.
Just one drawing. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks. I
Thank
think
you.
also in the back there were some other hands. Signs. Yeah. There's. Yeah.
Hi, Aimée. I'm Thijs. I was wondering, being a visual artist first and foremost, I guess, how does having to incorporate a lot of text or like original text, how does that affect your process? I mean, normally you can use a lot of imagery, but having to do a lot of text, does it narrow your process in any way?
Yes, it does, a little bit. I think it definitely did, because I had to make a comic version of the text first. So I had to cut out all the text that I didn't want to use. And yeah, so that took a lot of time. It was different from a comic scenario where the writer already knows, oh, this is going to be a comic. So I'm going to use the laws of comics to write this scenario page by page. Because if you work with a novel, it's not meant to be a comic. So there's a lot of stuff you cannot use, and there's a lot of stuff you need to cut out and change to make it work. And it's kind of like a puzzle that you're trying to figure out, and then when that's done, you start drawing. But yeah, for sure, I lost a lot of time doing that puzzle. Yes.
And did you got a lot of help as well, or did you ask help to
Yeah,
to do
so the publisher helped me, and the family of William Golding helped me too in finding the right scenes to use. But it also meant not using certain scenes that I really liked, but that were just not working in a comic.
And were they deciding that it wasn't working, or did you have the
we
autonomy?
both did. Yeah, we both did. So sometimes I would sketch those scenes and think, I don't know. Yeah. And I would present it to them, and they would then probably agree or say, just leave it out.
Okay, let's go to. I know there are some people down here, but if the mic is still there, go up.
Hi, I'm Sylvia. I join everyone else in thanking you for your amazing work. My question was building on your next work on the refugee camps, and I was wondering if there might be something that you might want to do after a few years in between these two projects differently, or something that really worked the first time and that you want to build on in the second experience. So if you could expand a bit more without major spoilers, I guess.
Thank you. Well, the project is going to be very different because it's fiction. So the first project that I did, which is also in the exhibition, is journalism. So you see how I have interviews with people. It's a very basic journalistic procedure, really, just interviewing people, listening to them, drawing their stories. And this time it's going to be fiction, so it's a bit like Days of Sand, where I have a real background, something that really happened, but I'm creating my own characters and put them in that place and let them play out their own story. So it's so that's the biggest difference, and it gives me more freedom to build a story that I think is very impressive. Yeah. Thank you.
And is it based on situations you encountered before, like the first time you went there, or is it something totally new?
Yes,
and you
totally
don't know
new. Yeah, it's totally new because the whole situation there changed radically. So the camps I visited in 2017 don't exist anymore, and the whole procedure has changed. And I really wanted it to be up to date, so it's going to be about the situation now.
Yeah. Do you already have the storyline in mind, or?
Yeah, I do. Yes, I do. Yes, and I'm still talking with my publisher about the right choices, the right direction, but I think we're almost at the point that I can start drawing, so that's exciting.
Great. Okay, very much up there.
Another one. Yes.
The mic is running to you.
Hi, I'm a big fan, and I'm a teacher on a secondary school, and I know Aimée, my husband, helped her with some research, and you will come to visit our secondary school on the 5th of December.
Yes.
And what I try to do, because I'm a big fan, is try to get the graphic novels into the secondary schools and to stimulate reading, and also to my colleague teachers who not always subscribe that graphic novels are a serious good thing for students to read. So can you help me to motivate well, everyone who's here, why it's important for young people to learn to read graphic novels and what it can add to their lives.
Yeah, thank you. I see more and more schools using graphic novels in their curriculum, so I'm very happy to see that. For me, I think it's a very easy way to read books that are on a high literary level, but are not as scary as novels are sometimes for young people, when they open up a book and they only see a lot of text. And especially these days, a lot of kids, they don't read as much, and they're not interested in reading, and they're kind of scared of this like tsunami of words. But when you open a graphic novel, the first thing you see is pictures. You read it as a film almost, and they're used to that. They're used to seeing films and Netflix and TikTok and that kind of stuff. But if you read a good graphic novel, you can still learn a lot about history, about people's lives, about all kinds of things happening in the world today. I think the most famous graphic novel is Mouse, which is a memoir about the Holocaust, which is amazing. And it's like the number one graphic novel because it is the example of a graphic novel that is used in schools as literature or in historical context too. And it's impossible not to cry when you read it. It's impossible not to be impacted by it for the next couple days. So yeah, for me it's very clear that graphic novels can be used in schools. Yeah.
And is it also something you get back in comments, for example?
Oh,
From
definitely.
kids
Yeah,
also?
definitely. Yeah, and I think with Lord of the Flies, for example, it opens up another reason to use them in schools because you can combine them with the original and ask the children to read the graphic novel and compare it to the original, the way we always used to watch movies and then read the original in school. I think this could be interesting because you have two books dealing with the same story. So
maybe it's also interesting to have novel authors to think about making a graphic novel out of their novel, right?
Yes.
So the other way around. I know there are still people here in the front who wanted to ask a question, but I see somebody in the midst. So I think there's time for just one question still. Raise your hand, yeah? Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But
just
there's a
remark.
mic coming your way.
Hi, I'm Madeline. I'm an author of novels. And what's happening is that authors are not paid that much. And of course, authors are not paid. And in children's books, they have to share their income. So this is making
it more hard, right?
authors choose less graphics in their children's books. And this makes the children's books less attractive. And this makes especially boys read less books. So I implore all authors to use graphics in their novels.
Even though it's not so much paid. Thank you for this comment. Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah. So it only was a comment. Yeah, next to you there is a question. So.
My name is Victoria.
Hi.
Just, you've spoke a lot about inspirations, maybe a personal question, because you were raised with an identical twin, if I understand, as well have identical twin in the family. So can you speak about this kind of part of inspiration or, between you, how you supported each other?
Yeah, funny. It's my sister is not in the art business. She's in the music business, which is also kind of creative, but very different. So yes, we were twins, but we were not very similar. I have to say, we have very different personalities, very different dreams and careers. So I look at her as just a sister, basically. So I don't know if that really influenced me or my work. Maybe there was a kind of competition because you're always together and you're always with the two of you, and you just try to always be the best one or something. So maybe that kind of help my career, but I don't know.
No.
Maybe that's bullshit.
Who
knows?
Who knows? Who knows? But one last question for me: is there still a big dream, such as Lord of the Flies, what you want to achieve?
I get this question a lot, and I don't know how to answer it because I don't think there is a similar project, not at that level.
No.
Because that was really a dream of mine. It is my favorite book. And the other books that I really like, they don't really need a graphic adaptation, I think. They're perfect as they are. So it's not as if I have a next book or a next thing I want to do. I just want to keep doing this work and inspire people in schools and kids, and just hope that that graphic novels will be accepted more and more. Maybe that's my dream.
And now you're working on your next project, like Days of Sand. You did the whole research already. What is the title? And when can we see it in the bookshelves?
We don't have a title yet, so that's a bit difficult. But I hope to release it in 2026, because then it's 10 years after the Turkey deal, that's way too complicated to explain, but it's the reason why refugees arriving in Europe are stuck in refugee camps. And there was a deal that was signed between Turkey and Europe. And to celebrate the Turkey deal, 10 years, it would be great if it would come out in 2026. So that's the plan.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Aimée, for this artist talk. Give her a warm applause.
Thank you. Thank you.